Yes, it is I, Tantus Naraban Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, 5th Ed D&D. Well, where we last left off, we finished talking about, well, today we're going to start with a new topic when it comes to dungeon mastering, between adventures. Now, this can mean a lot of different things. The fact is that your characters may have time in between various quests and adventures that they're going on in order to need some kind of distraction or to commit to side quests, things of that nature. It's a time for them to spend their gold, to delve deeper into their personal goals, to deepen their connection with the various world that they're in, with the world you're building, to make it feel like they're a part of it. This is when they're not exploring and adventuring the time in the middle. Now, the fact is that a lot of information on downtime activities and what to do in between adventures for your PCs are listed in the PHB. So on your PC side, they can really look here. What we're talking about here is important information around this for the DM. So, first thing that we're going to have to think about doing is adventures. Are your adventures linked together? There are really two styles of play here. The first one is episodic. Effectively, each adventure is self-contained. You don't have to make anything that makes them feel like their own story. It has its own villains, its own plot line, its own plot threads, which all wrap up by the end of it. Over the course of this adventure, of course, the adventures that they go on become harder as they become more powerful, and each one of them can have a different feeling to it, a different kind of thing drawing them into that adventure. The fact is that it is rarely going to have any kind of link to other ones. The other type of course, is narrative. Narrative means there is some kind of overarching connection between all of the stories that you're telling. This is much more powerful, and technically it's easier to run. The fact is that your players should feel their actions that they're doing in the course of the world. Because it's such a long adventure, the story becomes more epic as it goes on, and therefore their actions have more effect. You will want to do some things early on in the game to make as the later game established. Effectively, you're going to use your early game to make sure everything is linked together. There are a number of techniques you can use to do this. First off is an overreaching story. Now, this could take many forms. It could be that your players, your PCs, are put on some kind of quest to assemble this great artifact, and that each time they go after a piece of it is a story in and of itself, becoming more challenging, more difficult, perhaps dealing with those that might seek it out too. It could be that they're working for a certain organization that has them going on specific missions for a reason, that they don't learn the reason until later on in the game. So there are different routes you can take here, but overall it's meant to link together all your players over all of these missions very simply together and keep them together. You can then use plot seeds, plot devices. These are an important thing to put into your adventures, but be careful about them. If a plot seed is more interesting than the current plot they're on, your players are going to switch games. Right away, they're going to go from adventure that they're doing now to like, oh, this is more important. Let's go do this. So it should be in such a way that it's interesting, but not enough to detract your players from what they're currently doing. That's why it's actually recommended you put this in towards the end of an adventure, because it's when they're getting towards that climax. The climax is very interesting. It's already drawing them in. When you put a little seed there that they can think about after the climax, well, that's when they're drawing them into the next part of the adventure. You're effectively seeding the next adventure with hints and information, but not doing it in such a way that's going to detract from the current. Foreshadowing is an important tool also. You can basically foreshadow events to come, put little seeds and subtlety bits of information that hint on things that you're planning. The thing about foreshadowing is, this is the one that may have no result. The fact is that events and decisions that your characters make can alter things. Results of certain battles can alter things. So you might have foreshadowed something here, but when we come down to here, there may be no result to it. There may be nothing to it. You may have lost a lot in translation moving from A to B. effectively you may have lost a lot in the traversal of this entire part of the adventure. Not to say that you couldn't figure out a way to still have these upcoming events, but the fact is the subtle overshadowing, it isn't always successful. Now, consistency is a very important key to all of this. Keeping things the same as the course of the adventures keeps your characters connected to it, and understanding that the story is an overreaching thing, that the world itself is organic. The actions that the players take, or if they hear about things that are going on that they aren't involved in, if they see changes as a result of these, then the changes make sense. Other changes that are mysterious, just suddenly happening, will confuse the characters and draw them out from the world. Granted, you could always use one of these as a plot point and draw people into a story, but that's a little more difficult. You want to keep it as simple as it is, and that's the fact is, because it's not just expressing it to yourself, it's expressing it to both you and the players. So simple helps better. You're not infallible, neither is your memory, so keep a good notebook. Keep notes on a lot of things, especially changes that occur, and basic information about them so you can change and alter it as time goes on. Your notebook should contain information on your plans for the current adventure and adventures in the future. Basically, you're mapping out how the quest lines, how the campaign will be going. You should have notes on the characters you have, bits of information on their background and personality, and perhaps some of their statistics. You should have any copies of character handouts. Anything that you've handed out to them that they could be looking at, you should have a copy yourself. You should also have details. You should also have a detailed adventure log. This is a summarization of every session you have so you know what has happened over the course of those sessions. Little bits of information that you can reference to know what decisions you've made, what decisions your players have made, and the effects that they're having on the world as a whole. For any NPCs you should have notes on them. Statistics, little bits of personality, role-playing notes, information that allows you to play important NPCs, only as much as you need. A campaign calendar might be good too. You can keep track of how many days, how many weeks, how many months are going by. You can use that to reference it with important holidays and special events that your characters might get involved in, so they make it feel more like a world and that the passage of time is important. Seasons change, things alter as time goes by, and feeling like that time is rolling along is another way to immerse them into the world. The final types of things you're going to want are, of course, first a few notes on traps, magic items, and creatures, and how to alter them, so that if you need to alter specific trap, magic item, and creature to what's going on in the game, you can. And then a few notes on various dungeons, basically how you can throw some together very quickly and efficiently, and some notes on various encounters and creatures you can use within these various dungeons that you might be throwing together on the fly. This gives you the ability to build something that you're not planning out as much. But that's it for today. So, we talked about downtime, in between adventures. Now, this represents different things for a player and a dungeon master. For a player, it's just that. Downtime, spending time in between adventures, where they might spend things on expenses like living quarters and things like that, their lifestyles. Details of that are, of course, in the player's handbook. For you, the dungeon master, we have to think about, is this adventure linked to this adventure? Are they not linked at all? Am I telling a story that lasts through all of these adventures, or just something episodic? Answering these questions is the first one, and it's important to note that if you're doing something overarching, you might want to add a few details in the early adventure, which we talked about, which will affect the later adventure. We, of course, talked about what you can do to add consistency between all of these adventures, regardless if they're episodic or not. There needs to be a level of consistency, especially if the players are visiting the same place more than once. Consistency is a key, and a good notebook, or notes in general, are a way to keep that consistency. You're going to have to note a lot of information and keep track of it. You might not remember it, hence why you have notes to keep track of this and to keep us going between these adventures and keep things the same. In the next episode, we're going to talk about reoccurring expenses and downtime activities on the DM side, on the DM side instead of the player side. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel and the empire. Regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.